Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's development vlog, I guess. Um, so I'm just going to start off telling you why I'm streaming tonight, and it's primarily because I've been working on a write-up, an update to the previous devlog on doing floors and doing the building system, and I promised an update on that. And I've been writing on that particular piece for quite a while now, and it just kept growing in size. I kept adding more images, and finally it felt like it made more sense to just give you guys a demo of what some of these things look like at the moment, while talking about some of the challenges as well as some of the possible solutions to these problems. And before I start, though, I do want to go through some disclaimers, as it were. The game can easily crash at the moment, so if that happens, well, I'm actually going to be running it in the Unity editor, which also can cause some crashes. There is a chance that my computer might overheat. This is unrelated to the game. This is just my computer that's been acting up for the past couple of months. Actually, I should probably do something about this, but there is a chance that might happen. If it does, then just be patient, stick around, and I'll be back. And if that happens, I'll probably run a build version of the game instead, so that I don't have to have the extra sort of editor stuff running in the background. The tools and the game in general is still under really heavy development, so there's going to be a lot of stuff that might not make a lot of sense, or a lot of gizmos and things that are in the scene that would not normally be there and should not be there. The performance enhanced data structure, all of the stuff that Baggers has been working on, is not fully integrated and not really utilized much at all in this build, so it's going to be slower than the beta build. Also, I'm running this in the Unity editor, as I mentioned, which means that there's a bunch of debugging and drawing and stuff going on in the background, which means that the game is going to run a bit slower than it does in the build. It still sort of runs above 60 frames per second, so it's fine, but there's a bit of a difference between that and the actual builds that we do. So with that in mind, I am going to click play in the Unity editor, and we can start looking at some of these things. So as you'll see, the game will load pretty slowly now. This is specifically one of the major things that Baggers has been working on, and making sort of the game load in really quickly is one of those things. And this is just one of the test scenes that I've been playing around with when building. So the actual layout of things doesn't make a ton of sense, but it allows me to create a lot of edge cases, as well as sort of test out a lot of sort of vertical building. And first of all, I would also like to point out some of the changes that the alpha testers might not, well, they might have seen updates for, but they haven't experienced. For instance, the camera now, you can sort of you can tilt it, which is something that was not possible in the alpha build. There is still a limit, but we might end up tweaking those, and we'll see. The other thing, let's see, I have a piece of paper, I think I was trying to sort of get through, so I'm just going to cross off some things as I go. Another thing is something that is still under heavy work in progress, which is the new lighting system. And these UI things will change to make more sense, but we have the ability to put in like a day-night cycle, and you can also rotate the angle of the sun and things like that, which is pretty cool. We're still missing more of the more interesting post-processing effects and also lighting things, but those will be added before the beta. And but it looks pretty nice. And the way that's been achieved is by actually adding a reflection probe that is rendering out a single shader, so almost like a skybox. I'm going to go around in the Unity editor slightly, see if I can find that particular sphere, because it should be in the center here. Whoops, I went too far. Alright. Yeah, so we're drawing so many gizmos in the Unity editor at the moment. So this is the reflection sphere. Oh. Over here. And if I... Wow, this is not wanting to cooperate. There we go. So this is actually the skybox. This is not being rendered in game, it's just being rendered into a single camera. And when we go into the game, and I'm going to move the game a little bit to the side so that we can expose this, while I move the thing around, it has this simulated skybox in this reflection cube, and that is affecting all of the ambient lights in the game itself. So if I put the game sort of over the camera, okay, no, I can't do that, let's see. So then as we do that, all of the lighting in the scene is picking up this reflection sphere in their ambient color, which with the light itself and the other lights in the scene creates this fairly sort of soft and dynamic look. I'm not sure why I went there, because I wasn't planning on talking about that, but if there's anyone interested, then yeah, that's how we're doing that. So that's the day-night. As I mentioned, still a lot of UI and stuff missing in this particular case. The other thing is something that we haven't talked too much about. Let's see if I can actually find a character. Yeah. So the characters are no longer on the grid by default. We will make it so that you can enable for your campaign to snap characters to the grid. The other thing that I'm currently working on is the character controller. That is why you have this capsule in the middle here, because I'm just working on it still, and that's also why the characters are currently feeling a bit weird. So I'm not going to be showing a lot of character movement because yeah, it is somewhat broken at the moment. But you now can play the game off the grid. Capture is off center, okay. Oh. Actually, I need to run this in full mode. There we go. Sorry about that. I think it's sorted now. And thanks for the shout out. Let's see. Okay. So that is off the grid characters. And I'm just talking about these now as changes that have been done, well, for the people who are currently in the alpha. But what we're really supposed to talk about is the floor system as well as the building system. So previously we had a floor system that allowed you to move up in increments, and then it would hide everything that was on the floors above the selected floor. So you would get like floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. And if people have been watching any of the streams of our wonderful alpha testers, you would probably have seen that system in play. So, but we wanted to get rid of that just because it wasn't particularly flexible, and it had a bunch of challenges where, okay, so how do we so floors aren't always the same height, so how do we account for like different heights at different floors. And one of the solutions could have been, okay, you can set like the height of a floor specifically, but if you're building like a village, then the lower floor of your tavern might not be the same as the like castle guard tower, and you would want those to be on sort of separate layers. So that wouldn't really solve anything. So what we decided to do instead was to try to allow for free building, and then see whether or not we could sort of hide areas of the map as you interacted with it. And that's what the part of what the new system does. Let's see. The other thing that the old system had was it was quite satisfying to move between different floors. So for instance, when you went from one floor to another, then a part of the building would sort of disappear and it would flow away, and when you went back down again, the same would happen, just sort of the opposite way. And that was incredibly satisfying, and that was one thing we also wanted to keep. Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm going through the papers here. So it'll be yeah. Thanks for being patient. Let's see. All right. So yes, the feel of the old dropping out. Navigation, just getting around, was a bit of a problem with the previous floor system, and that is something that is a bigger challenge now, because we don't have any increments of where you can go. But it was something that needed to be solved, and I hope that it is something that we've at least gotten quite far on the way of solving. So just to show a little bit about how some of these things work, is if I go into a building down here, I double click now to navigate. That's another thing. So you can double click to navigate, and if you double click in an area, it will show you that floor specifically. So if I double click inside here, then zoom in, it will hide everything above that floor. And that means if I can go outside doing the same thing, which will reveal everything. The other thing that will reveal everything is actually zooming out, and that's also an option that we might have to tweak a bit, and maybe even allow players and users to tweak as well. As we saw in the same instance of this, is that we still have this ability to reveal and hide tiles with that sort of bouncy feel that the previous system had. And that is something I personally feel has been, well, it really sells the game to be able to do that. So we needed to make sure that we kept that functionality. We've also added these markers on the side, and currently they're set up to be to sort of connect to characters. So any place there's like a character, you'll get a marker. These markers change as you move through the level, depending on what's on there. It's not supposed to be characters. It's actually supposed to be these bookmarks or that you place out in the world that you can then use to set up these floors for yourself. So if I move between this one and this one, you can see there's a nice transition going on there. So I move him in there, and we can go back and forth, go outside, and it feels like it's working pretty well. There are some situations though where this system has some issues. For instance, if you go into an area that has multiple floors revealed, because the way this works is that the place I double click, so I'm going to double click in here, it ray traces up and finds the ceiling, or at least it goes as far as it can go, or think it can go, and then it shows you that. So in this case we have this room which is quite large. It has a a really tall ceiling, and that's not going to show you much sort of game space. So we have this additional mode that you can go into currently, and we need to figure out sort of when this needs to be enabled or not. So if I hit N, we do this cutout, and it will cut through the mesh in front of your cursor, and it sort of works. We just need to figure out when to turn on and turn off, and whether or not that should be automated or it's just like a key that we reveal to the player itself themselves. But it is sort of between those two methods of looking into buildings, we should hopefully cover most of people's needs. We just need to make them well, quite intuitive, I guess. And this is something that we'll try to do before the beta, but we'll probably have to spend some time with you guys to play around with this to see what works during the beta period as well. So with the double clicking, you can move around pretty quickly. We also have this bar to the right there, where you can also move your camera up and down here. At the same place, you can also manually set the sort of the cut plane if you want to do that, if you want full control over it. So that is the basics for the floor systems. So basically we've gotten rid of all of the floor stuff. You can now build really tall things, and you can connect them together, and you can maneuver around, you can go into places, and it seems like it's working out really well. And I hope that when people start playing it, they'll find that it's sort of covering what they need. But with this system, we also needed to implement a new building system. So the previous system for building was meant to be built on a flat surface, which means that when we picked up a piece to build with, you would only be able to place it either on top of something else or sort of to the side of it. You could not place underneath, you could not place sort of in clever places, or sort of heighten them, rise them up and then place things. And it worked for what we initially thought the game would be, which was these basically flat these flat, smaller, even sort of smaller dioramas. But with the vertical space, we also needed to be able to create or at least make it easy to build these types of spaces. So a few things that we've added or changed from the alpha for the ones that have access to that, and hopefully it's going to show people who do not or are just interested in how sort of vertical space would be achieved. You can now build as you would normally, but the one additional thing is that you can also build out from an area. So when you sort of move your cursor around on the wall, it will try to snap to an increment of about 0.25 or exactly up the wall. So I can build outwards like this. I can also just drag out like this. That also works. So we can sort of start up at the plane here. Another thing that you can do to start vertically is we have this grid up here, and it's toggleable. So I currently didn't have it on, but you can move this plane up and down. You can also sort of sample it. So if you want to let's say, build on this plane only, you can enable this grid. And then you can sort of just build as that being as if it's sort of your ground floor. And this is quite helpful for sort of starting at a higher altitude. Another thing that hasn't been possible before is something that should be incredibly simple, but it's sort of building underneath other things. So now you can sort of do this, you can place this thing inside of here, and that works. You can also like take a wall out and sort of move them around, place new ones. Let's see. That's a thing you can do. You can build outwards by holding down Shift. You can lock the current plane of your of the tile, which allows you to easily move out. So let's say that you want to make sure that this one latches on or is at the same y-axis as this one, or the vertical space, I guess you could say. I can hold down, and any place that I place it now outside of here, it will always line up. So if we go here and then we do this, it will line up just fine. You can also hold down Shift and scroll to move pieces up and down from that point. So you can build underneath like this. You can also grab a pillar and say, okay, I want to make sure that you hit sort of exactly underneath. I'm going to do that like there, and we can place this on top. Oops. And then I need another one of these, probably like that. So there's a bunch of new tools, or functionality I should say, because the base tools work the same way, to handle more vertical spaces. A final thing that we've added that doesn't really occur with vertical spaces, but it's a problem that we've been having with some other types of spaces, is this situation here. So we have these corner pieces that we often have to sort of rotate into place. So if we have like a situation like this, oops, like that, and then we have this corner piece, you can now place corner pieces on sort of the half grid. So I can just go in here and I will always be able to sort of place it in this corner regardless of orientation. And this works on any asset that is half a tile in any one direction. So it also works on walls, technically standalone walls. So if we go up here and we look at, let's see, I think I have like some standalone walls here. Let's see, I can take out a wall. So let's take out this wall, and then I am going to find the dungeon set. Dungeons. We will also make it easier to sort of navigate this list. So we have like this ruined wall, and previously you could only sort of place it like on one of the sides of the units, but now you can take individual walls and turn them around like this. And for the people who haven't played the alpha, I'm guessing what I'm telling you now doesn't make a lot of sense, because yeah, why wouldn't you be able to do that? Well, it's been a bit of an issue with some other pieces in the past, but now you can place these types of walls on half tiles. Another thing, I guess the final thing actually, which is something that a lot of our streamers and alpha testers have been doing, is what they'd like to call kit bashing. So basically, going out of into these crazy areas to trick the system into combining tiles that would otherwise not be combinable, because you can't normally put tiles into the same space. We've actually we're actually wanting to allow this now. So if you take a tile, let's say for instance this one, and you try to push it down into the ground, you'll get like a red shader telling you can't do that, right? However, if you click on this button, so turning on clipping just tells you that yeah, this can go really badly, but we're going to allow you to do it anyway. So now when I do this, you can actually take and push it through the tile and then place it there. And now you created a invalid tile, invalid I should say, but the game now allows you to do that because of this clipping. We don't necessarily recommend doing it, but it's there's just situations where and we've seen what you guys have created as well, right? So that's yeah. So there's a mode for that now that specifically you have to specifically turn on, but that is going to allow you to make some decisions like that. And I've made some things here. For instance, this is something that I put in here illegally, but it worked really well for. I mean, you're never going to have an open dungeon like this, but it sort of worked quite well in this type of situation. Alright, let's see where I'm at. So that was clipping. Yeah, there are some things about the building system that is not quite there yet. First of all, when we're building, the system is quite twitchy, so a lot of times it will sort of move a bit all over the place, and I'm planning on looking into ways of deferring the movement a bit so that we can make sure that this type of movement doesn't happen as frequently, because it can get a bit annoying. The other thing, which is a bit of a problem, the new system uses the cursor position to try and place the tile. This is so that we're able to push, for instance, tile underneath other tiles and things like that, and then it does some checking around it to see whether or not this is a valid placement. But that sometimes makes it difficult to place things on top of buildings like this. So from like here now, if I want to place this on top of this so that it actually does this, then it's not going to let me without sort of maneuvering about a little bit. And maybe that's not a problem, but it can get a bit annoying. So we're going to look into seeing if there's a way to better predict those situations and then see if we can handle them. One way of handling it currently is just sort of, if you're in the situation where you can't place it where you want, but you're at the right height, you can hold down shift and then you can sort of move it around on that height and place it wherever. Alright, so I think that was actually the things I wanted to talk about as far as the building system goes as well. And before I move on and talking a little bit about the beta, I'm going to go through some of the questions. I'm sure some of them had already been answered by people in chat, and I apologize, I haven't really been paying attention in the chat. But let's see what we've got. Alright, so Kuro 7600, so 7600 I'm guessing, Will figures be able to snap to the grid? Yes, we'll have a mode for snapping to the grid. That was the default in the alpha, but we removed it. But we'll have a checkbox for the campaign whether or not you want to actually snap that in, and hopefully that will be in for the beta. Yeah, so I guess you've already commented on that, so let's see. Let's see. Toggle snap to grid via key press. Yeah, that's sort of answered. Divinister, any news on the beta? Possible date? I'll talk about that a little bit afterwards. Mr. Squarepeg asked, would TaleSpire be would be suitable for tabletop war games? It's certainly the systems that exist in the game is quite focused on being a sort of role-playing tabletop thing. However, we would be interested in seeing how we would make systems for doing stuff like wargaming, where maybe moving armies and things like that. So certainly not for early access, but I mean you can still play them. It's just that it's probably not ideal quite yet. But it's something for the future that would be incredibly fun to look into. Let's see. Are there any level bounds or world bounds in TaleSpire? I'm not entirely sure if I understand that question. The size you can build is really large. That's if you're asking for deliberate level bounds, or if there's the system itself. Let's see. Can you add lower levels to the to your current build? Say if you find out you need to add a basement to your house. In the current version, you can't. However, it is that is something that we are going to do to allow building sort of underground, as it were. And we're not, as in even now, it would maybe be possible, but there's certain parts of the system that isn't particularly flexible once you go below 0. But it's definitely something that we're going to have. That was Asnog, by the way. So Kuro 7600 asks, is disabling clipping a one tile or a universal toggle? Yeah, so the disable thing it's a universal thing. So when this button is toggled, then you can place anything illegally, technically. And then when you want those legal bounds to be given back to you, you just toggle it. You toggle it back off. Trisnik Alamode asks, or comments, I guess, it would also be nice to be able to snap to a grid intersection. For example, a large-sized creature that takes up 4 squares instead of 1. Yeah, that's a good point. We'll have to look into that. Rich07 Taylor ask update on hills using phone blocks. There is currently no updates on that. It will not be available for the beta, but it's something we'll start looking at during the beta period before the early access. Kuro asks, what are the estimated system requirements? We'll have to get back to you on that because we're still trying to figure that one out. Let's see, Trisnik asks what happens if you place a token on a set of stairs. So currently they will just sort of it doesn't look particularly good right now. They will sort of do this thing. So there's a bit of clipping involved and things, and it's not particularly nice looking, but we'll look into some things there later. Lofstone asks, how is the connection done between players? Can you swap maps without player disconnecting, or do you have to start a new session for each map? You can go to any map at any point. Actually, any player can go to any map at any point, and they still remain connected. Sort of, anyway. It won't look like you're going anywhere anyway. So, yes, you can go between maps without any problems. And I do have a couple of other maps that I was playing around earlier today when I was trying to see whether or not there were any major problems with the building system. And let's see, we have like this one. I think that's all of the questions I've got recorded at least. So I was building like a large tavern-like building today, and it was actually a ton of fun. So this one we have like a lower floor which has a bunch of rats. It's not quite a cellar, but it's like, well, it's a lower floor. And then we can go up to the second floor, which is the tavern. And then there's also some characters on the top floor that is just doing some other sort of magic and dealing with the portal and things. With that, I also, for the people who haven't seen too much of TaleSpire, there is also, we can also copy and paste things. You can share those copies with other people. In fact, there's a community built site for doing that in the alpha, which is amazing. It's TaleBazaar, Bazaar, I guess. The way that currently works is that you make a selection. The selection tool is currently broken, but I can sort of copy this one. Let's see. Let's try this and then see if I can get it to work, because that's something I was working on earlier today. So it's a bit fidgety. Let's see if I can get it to select what I wanted to select. All right. Let's see. There we go. So you can take this entire building, you could copy it out, and you can also just make a bunch of copies of it if you want to quickly make a cookie cutter town, I guess. So now we have a bunch of these, and the idea is that you can save out these as prefabs or something similar, and then you can also build a lot quicker than going in and like building with individual tiles. We're also looking into doing sort of tile intersection so that you can sort of combine some of those on the map, which hopefully should be, well, we'll see how that goes as well. But yeah, now we have some versions of this. So. Let's see. Let's check if there's any more questions. Send Commander asks, how is the character building coming along? At the moment, it is not. We are going to start looking at that seriously once the early access is out. Terifel, any chance of having a snapping ruler to measure distance between 2 points or creatures? We will have rulers. We'll have a straight one and we'll have a circular one, hopefully for the beta release. Is the roof colorable? Not currently. We'll have multiple versions of the roof. I have been thinking about the possibility of making them tintable, but for now there's probably going to be different versions. Coro asks, is a object workshop for sharing pre-built stuff planned? I'm not entirely sure what that question entails. Could you elaborate? Okay, so maybe like yeah, we're still working on how prefabs and things should be stored in the game itself. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so the way the sharing has been working is that when you copy it out from the game, you're given a single string, so a piece of text, and you can share that with anyone, and then they can just copy that piece of text and paste it into the game. I would try to demonstrate, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not the previous strings are currently compatible. And yeah, there is the community website I talked about, TaleSpire. So this was the GIF that we shared earlier today. So Skyrel asks, are there line of sight or vision in darkness mechanics? We don't have anything for vision in darkness yet, but there will be line of sight, which is something that we're well, I assume is going to be in for the beta. Miserable G asks, will we eventually be able to change the movement of characters per character? Yeah, so we did have like this, let's call it pathfinding before, which also told you how far you could move, and we will be re-implementing that, and with that we'll at least be able to tell the character how far. Yeah, there will be some sort of system for knowing how far you're able to move, at least. And I'm not sure if that would be set per character, but that's something we'll have to look into. Divinister asks, how are character sheets going to be? Do you need to create every attribute and skill, or will they already be implemented? Currently, and for the early access at least, we won't have any implementation of a character sheet. We'll have sort of some attributes available for customization on the characters themselves. So underneath here you have like an HP, and then you have some stats here that will be renameable, probably maybe on a campaign basis. We're not entirely sure, but you will have to keep character tally and stuff on the side. There is one of the stretch goals were like a rule system implementation of sorts, and we're not entirely sure what that will look like yet. Kura asks, are you talking to first-party publishers about officially licensing game systems? We would love to, but yeah, we're currently not sort of officially talking to anyone anyway. But that is something we would love to do, and if anyone knows anyone that would want to do their systems in TaleSpire as well, yeah, get in touch. That would be awesome. All right. Well, I think unless there's any further questions, I've been going for 45 minutes now, which was actually exactly the time I was hoping to go for. And I'll stick around for a couple of more minutes in case there's any more questions. Otherwise, I hope that you got something out of my rambling, and I would want to mention something about the beta at the end here, just because there has been some questions about the beta, as well as I would like to just reiterate on the fact that the beta is very much a beta type of thing. So it's definitely happening towards the end of February, in the sense that it's as late as we can make it in February, to be honest, because we still have quite a bit to do, but we're working really hard on making that deadline. Fog of War will not be in the beta. We will be working on that once the beta has started. There will be ways to hide creatures, and probably tiles as well, via which is something I haven't touched on, but we have this GM mode, so Game Master mode, where you can sort of get some more information, and we are going to be adding functionality to this mode, and one of those things is being able to easily hide and show creatures, as well as hopefully tiles as well. So the beta will very much be a beta. What that means is that when we release, there is going to be a lot of fixes made quite rapidly, as they are discovered. That means that the feedback that you guys give is going to be really important to us, and it is not in like a full game ready state. That does not mean that the game isn't supposed to be working. We're working hard to get the basic functionality in, like building, playing together, rolling dice, which you should still be able to do. Yeah, you can still roll dice, and doing pretty much everything that you were able to do in the alpha of the game, plus all of these new systems. The only thing, as I mentioned, is the Fog of War. We will do our best not to ruin boards, but as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of bugs. And the beta is by no means going to be of the quality of the early access or the full release game. So it's really important that people understand that it is going to be in very active development. Is there anything else I should add? I'm just checking with the rest of the team. Okay, I did touch about on hiding stuff, but I'll do that again. So as I mentioned, there will not be Fog of War for the beta. We'll start work on that once the beta is out. However, we will have the option to go into the Game Master mode and toggle hide creatures, but also we're looking into doing some hide volumes for tiles as well. Vagabond asks, is the existing vision going away in the beta? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. Hotdog 800 asks, is there going to be a colorblind mode? That is something that we really have to look into, and yeah, we might need some help to sort of find out what some good methods and what the problem areas are there for people who yeah, people who are colorblind. Legendox asks, will we be able to tint of the delivered minis, like changing a goblin from green to brown as an example? There will be a tinting, there will be creature tinting in the game. It might not be available for the initial release of the beta, but that is something that we'll definitely have in there before the early access goes out. Let's see. Yeah, so the form of the Fog of War has changed, and we're still sort of working out the details, but they're most likely going to be fogged volumes rather than things sort of disappearing completely. And the reason for that is because with how people were building these worlds, having the tiles reveal the ways we had before didn't make as much sense. Yeah, and we'll also have a line of sight system that will at least have creatures that the players can't see with their selected miniature will be hidden. Awesome. All right, let's checking up on the questions one last time. Nitro Beast Productions adds, do you guys have a release window for the beta plan? Um, so yeah, the beta starts at the end of February. Um, but as far as sort of what's released when during that period of time is something that will come flowing out as we do things. We will make a plan internally, and we'll handle things as things come up. First and foremost, we'll handle the problems that people encounter when they start playing the beta, so that at least the systems that we have in place work as intended. And for the people that might be on the fence about the beta um, pre-order, because we opened up the pre-order for which also includes access to the beta. The pre-order will end when the beta goes out, so there will be a window as the game is in beta where it won't be available for purchase. So then the early access would be the next time. All right. So I think that's actually it for me tonight. And thank you guys very much for hanging out and for asking questions. And I hope this has been somewhat enlightening. And it's been fun. And the next one I'll do on the next stream I'll do, which is probably still going to be a couple of weeks away, would be showing off some character movements and things like that. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see everyone around. Bye.